I'm Graham.
And I'm Bryce.
And this is the Vents Podcast.
Yeah, the intro is going to be a little bit later.
Yeah.
Well, this is the intro.
Yeah, so this is a pre-recorded intro for this week and this upcoming week. If this is my testimony that you're watching, then this is the final week.
Yeah, not the final week of the podcast, but the final week of this intro.
Yeah, so like I just said, we're doing our testimonies. So we try to keep it really, really base level with the Vents Podcast. We don't do political. We don't do controversial, other than like the controversies, like
that are like
the
buzzing.
Myths. Yeah. So we also don't want this to be a faith-based podcast, but a podcast where we can share our beliefs through different topics and not make it the focus and just make it an underlying thing. Yeah.
So a little bit of kind of like what testimonies are, if you're not familiar. It's your personal story of you coming to faith, and then kind of like, here's my hand. So before faith, and then that story, and then coming to faith, and then kind of how that faith has been playing out. Exactly. And so I'm going to be sharing mine for the first week, and that's episode
15?
16? And maybe, I don't remember.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. And then I'll be sharing mine for the second week.
Yep.
But we want to make sure that you guys really know where we came from, who we are, and what we've gone through.
Yeah. And
how our relationship with God has changed our lives, and where we're at now, and where we want to be in the future.
Right. We want you guys to know us better, and and we also don't want to alarm you because we're going to be alone during those times.
Yeah.
I was out of the room when Graham recorded his, and he was out of the room when I recorded mine.
But we know each other's testimonies, but we wanted this is a completely different style of podcast. If you're listening, I recommend you watch. And if you're watching, I recommend you listen, because there's something that you'll get out of each one. You'll just notice different things. And if you're watching, you'll notice that it's just me or it's just Bryce and it's all black.
Yeah.
But we really were excited to share this with you guys. I really hope that you enjoy it. And if you have anything that you want to say, feel free to leave a comment, DM us, and follow us on all of our socials.
Yeah, you can do that on Facebook, at Vents Podcast, Instagram, at Vents Podcast. You can comment things on YouTube, at Vents Podcast. And if you're listening, it's capital VENTS on Spotify and iTunes. Or you can tell Alexa or Google, or you can say, "Hey Siri." And other than that, get ready for some other topics as we're kind of nearing the end of this season. We hope you enjoy. Thank you for letting us vent.
See you guys.
Yeah, so as you guys heard or saw, this week is a little different, and next week is going to be different too. This week is my testimony, my story, and as Christians, Graham and I's stories, we try and revolve them around God and not ourselves, and kind of our walk to God. So this is that story for me. I have my story written out in a notebook. It's a pretty big notebook, so I'm able to keep writing it and keep updating where I am, how I'm doing, and what my walk looks like at that time with God. Kind of a precursor, something that I have written on the inside cover of my notebook. It says, "This is a book where typos are not my only mistakes." It's a little funny and ironic, and I do apologize. I am a little sick, and my throat gets really dry, so if I cough, yeah, I'm sorry. I have water. I'm gonna try and not cough throughout this, but with that being said, let's get into this. Um, so, this is my testimony. My walk with the Lord has, it's been up and down. And that's really the most vague and easy way to explain it, and that's the case for a lot of people. But for me, let me give you some background. I grew up in a Christian family, and in my family we have my mom, my dad, my older sister Allie, my twin sister Kiki, or she goes by Kirsten now, but whatever, and then my two half-brothers Pat and Sean. I grew up going to Awanas. I was baptized when I was 8 years old. I didn't really know what that meant, but nevertheless, I was baptized. Growing up, and now, I want to say something to my dad right now. Dad, if you're watching this or if you're listening to this, I want you to know that I love you and I don't blame you for anything. You made a lot of sacrifices, and you still make so many sacrifices for me, for the family, and so none of this is on you. It's on me, and that's what I'm about to get into. Growing up, my dad, he wasn't around too much. It's not like he left the family, but my dad, he's a pilot. He's always been a pilot, and that's a sweet job. And I love being able to tell my friends that my dad's a pilot. And yeah, it might be cheesy, but I'm really excited about my dad's career. But with that, my dad was always gone. He was always flying. He was always on trips. Sometimes for weeks, and sometimes he'd be training or something for months, and he'd be gone, and that was hard. But I always saw my dad as a scary person. He was just that military guy. He was in the Air Force Academy. He was in the Air Force, and he enforced punishment for bad behavior. And because of that, I distanced myself from him. That's not his fault. That's on me, and that's my fault. Moving on, my family moved when I was 9 to Illinois from Colorado, where I was born. I started in a new school. I was making new friends. I was going to church every Sunday. I never really cared or wanted to go to church, but I was going. And when I lived in that first suburb we moved to, I was going to elementary school, and I was a troublemaker. I would come home from school every day with a referral or a slip from the principal that my mom needed to sign, and it was because of doing something bad. It was for either bullying a kid or doing something out of line, and I was that kid. I was the kid that came home every day with something for my mom to sign, and she would be waiting at home with a pen in her hand ready to sign it. Sometimes, or one time, I tried to forge her signature, and that turned out worse because I was in 5th grade, and forging signatures was not my specialty at that time, and it still isn't today. I can barely write my own signature. But yeah, seriously, every day, come home with one. Except for when my dad was home. You see, if my dad was home, I would be on my best behavior at school because I didn't want to have to hand my mom or my dad that slip the day and be punished by him. He wouldn't beat me or anything. It was just he was just scary to me, and I just didn't want to um, disappoint him like that. So moving on, my family, we moved to another suburb. Um, we moved to St. Charles, Illinois, and that's kind of where Graham and I met, but we didn't meet for a while. So when we moved, didn't, I don't know, I didn't make a lot of friends at first, so I kind of just kept my head down at school. I didn't talk to anybody. I was going to church with my family. I was going to the middle school ministry, Genesis, which I'm a leader at right now, and it's shaped me so much. And but at this time, it was when I started getting compared to my siblings. My older sister at this point was getting ready to go to college, or in college at the time, and she was doing great. She was in nursing school at Mizzou, which is a very competitive program to get in, and my twin sister Kiki was getting straight A's. She was on extracurriculars, and I wasn't involved with anything. I was just, I wasn't doing well on tests. I was failing, and I would I would have great grades during the semester, but by the time finals came around, my grades would tank, and yeah, it led to great disappointment from my parents, and I know I could have succeeded better, but I just didn't apply myself. And in high school too is when I got involved with the wrong crowd of people. And this is where a double life of mine began. I was going to church on Sundays with my family. I was going to youth group every Wednesday night with my sister, and I got into the wrong crowd, and I started making a lot of poor decisions. At this point, I started smoking cigarettes and smoking pot. I was even selling drugs. I was dealing drugs. I was taking anything anybody would give me, from shrooms to people's prescriptions, stuff like that. And I was drinking. That wasn't the big deal at that time, drinking. But at this point, I was lost, and I wanted nothing to do with God at this time. I didn't want to go to church. I didn't want to go to youth group, but I did because I wanted my parents to think that I was a good kid, and I wasn't. So I got caught by my parents in the fall of my junior year in high school. I didn't get caught with pot. I didn't get caught with cigarettes or anything else. I got caught vaping. And by this point, I had got into trouble a couple times with the police, off-roading, or just not being a good person, not being a good kid. And it only led to greater disappointment from my parents. And things got pretty animated between me and my family at this time because I wanted to live the life of an adult, and I was still a kid, and I didn't understand that, and so arguments would break out all the time. I would be going to therapy now for getting caught vaping, and this was kind of the point when I knew I had to start getting my life together. I was at youth group, and this girl was telling us about a mission trip she was going on to Haiti. And at that moment, it kind of clicked. I knew I needed something, and that was it. I went home after youth group that night, and I told my parents that I was going on this trip, and I did not take no for an answer. I was, quote unquote, ready for this trip, I thought. And, I did the fundraising, and boom, I was on the plane leaving for Haiti I had Graham with me, I was with the youth pastor, and on this trip I was quiet, and I was focused on construction, because that's some skills that I've picked up and learned and used throughout high school and still now. But God, He made Himself known to me on the top of the mountain that we would go up to every morning at 5 to pray on. I experienced God in a completely new way. I came home from that trip and I emailed the youth pastor, the director of youth ministry, begging if I could be a counselor at the summer camp the middle schoolers would go on. For some reason, he let me co-lead a cabin of middle school boys. I was with Graham, another leader, and myself, and we were leading 8th grade boys. And during that week, 3 boys in our cabin chose to surrender their lives to Christ. And I got to do the prayer of repentance with them. I got to lead them through that. And right at that point, and I can remember it so vividly, I felt the Holy Spirit intoxicate me. That's kind of the best description I can give for that. Now, before this, I had experienced plenty of intoxication. I experienced intoxication through drinking or doing drugs, but nothing like this. Nothing could have been better than that. And following that prayer, I ran out of the cabin, bawling my eyes out. And I'm not a crier, I'm not an emotional guy. You guys might be able to see that in these podcasts. And I called my dad. I tell him what happened. I barely was able to choke out the words. I want to do this for the rest of my life. He said, I'm proud of you. Now, I'm sure my dad had said that to me before, but that was the first time that I heard it, Like, I've heard it before, but that was the first time that I heard it, and I remembered it, and it clicked with me. My dad saying, I'm proud of you. After all the disappointing I had done, after being such a bad student in school, getting in trouble with so much stuff, hearing him say, I'm proud of you, was it was exactly what I needed to hear. He was proud of me. Thanks, Dad. That summer comes to a close, and I applied to the only school I want to go to. And I wanted to go for a degree in youth ministry. That school was Moody Bible Institute. Somehow, I got accepted into that school. I'm here now. I started leading a middle school group of boys at Genesis, the youth group. I was interning with my mentor, and somebody who I'm proud to call one of the most influential people in my life, Eli. Eli, I don't know if you watch these at all or very much or listen to these, but thank you for how you've shaped me, how you've supported me, the wisdom you've spoke into my life. So thank you for that. And then my dad, he gets a job in Seattle. I have the choice of moving with my family to Seattle or staying in Illinois. I picked Illinois. My family, they moved away to Seattle, and they live there now. I stayed with my best friend Graham. Now, I met Graham in youth group, and I never brought him around the bad things that I was doing because I didn't want to be a bad influence on him. Yeah, we did some bad things together, but I never brought him into this world of pain that I would have caused him. And I don't know why, but yeah, I never did that because I didn't want to be a bad influence on him. And it's funny because he's older than me, and usually that's vice versa. But during that summer, I got myself prepared for Moody. Then the day came. It was my first day at Moody. Now this day it went by very quick. My family was here to help me move in. And then after that, during that year, I grew so much. And that's all thanks to God's abounding love and grace in my life. And within this love of grace, things are still tough for me. I've been struggling with a lot of depression and anxiety, and you guys kind of know a little bit about that. And I've been getting treated for it. But I still have hope. I still know that I'm not alone in this battle. I'm not alone in this walk of mine, this path that I'm on. And I know that this story is not over. I know that God has great plans for me. And that's why this story has a happy ending, and I just haven't gotten there yet. With all that being said, that's really all I have written down. I want to leave you guys with a word of wisdom that I read in a book. And it kind of speaks to me in a deep way. It says, in order to rise with Christ, you must die with him first. And that's by Cornelius Plattinga Jr. To me, I've only started to rise with Christ. And my death with him was my death with... It was the death of my poor decisions, the drugs, the double life. Letting that stuff go and letting it be my past was the death, and I'm still I'm still rising with Christ. Now, people have asked me, Bryce, do you regret any of the stuff that you did or that you didn't do? And I don't. I really don't. I am grateful for the walk I've had and the walk I'm going to have, because that gives me the ability to minister to people, to be empathetic towards people who are struggling the way I've struggled before. And I don't credit myself for any of this, and I want to make it clear that I wouldn't be here I wouldn't be at Moody. I wouldn't be friends with Graham probably if it wasn't because of God's grace. And I thank you guys for watching this, for hearing this. I know some of you only listen, some of you only watch, but we appreciate every single one of you. And yeah, this is my story, and it's not over, but I'm glad that I could have told you guys where it is now, and that you guys can be a part of this. Thanks.